There's something Carl Jung taught me about human nature that is so profound, so transformative, and at the same time so disturbing that it completely changed how I see every person I meet, every relationship I have, and every decision I make in my life. If this resonates with you, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps us dive deeper into the psychological truths that can genuinely transform how you understand yourself and others. What Jung revealed to me is this: every single person you encounter is living a double life, and most of them don't even know it. They have a public self that they present to the world, carefully crafted to gain approval, avoid rejection, and maintain social acceptance. But underneath that public facade lies what Jung called the shadow, a hidden realm of suppressed desires, rejected emotions, and disowned aspects of their personality that they would never admit to themselves, let alone to others. But here's the part that will change how you see everyone around you forever. Jung discovered that this shadow isn't just a collection of negative traits or embarrassing qualities. It contains some of the most powerful, creative, and authentic aspects of who that person really is. The very qualities that make them most interesting, most passionate, most alive, are often the ones they've learned to hide from the world and even from themselves. This means that the person sitting across from you at dinner, the colleague you work with every day, even your closest friends and family members, are all walking around with entire universes of unexpressed potential locked away in their unconscious mind. They're living as fractions of who they really are, and they don't even realize what they're missing. Jung taught me to look for what he called shadow leakage, the moments when someone's authentic self accidentally breaks through their carefully maintained persona. It might be a flash of anger that reveals their suppressed power, a moment of vulnerability that shows their hidden tenderness, or a burst of creativity that hints at artistic potential they've never developed. Once you start recognizing these shadow leaks, you begin to see that most people are walking contradictions. The person who presents themselves as endlessly patient and agreeable might have a shadow full of fierce boundaries and righteous anger. The individual who appears confident and self-assured might be hiding profound sensitivity and need for authentic connection. The one who seems practical and rational might have a shadow rich with mystical insights and creative vision. But Jung revealed something even more unsettling about this hidden reality. Most people are not just unaware of their own shadow, they're actively running from it. They've constructed their entire identity around being the opposite of what their shadow contains. The overly nice person is terrified of their anger. The compulsively rational person is afraid of their emotions. The endlessly giving person is scared of their own needs and desires. This creates what Jung called the persona trap, where people become so identified with their public image that they lose access to their authentic power and creativity. They become hollow versions of themselves, going through the motions of life but never accessing the passionate, creative, powerful aspects of their nature that could make their existence truly meaningful and fulfilling. Jung taught me that when you understand this about people, it changes everything about how you relate to them. You stop taking their persona presentations at face value and start looking for the real person underneath. You begin to see their apparent weaknesses as potential gateways to their hidden strengths. You recognize their most annoying qualities as often being distorted expressions of their greatest gifts. The person who seems arrogant might have a shadow containing genuine confidence and leadership ability that they've never learned to express appropriately. The individual who appears weak and helpless might be hiding tremendous inner strength that they're afraid to claim. The one who seems cold and detached might have a shadow full of deep feeling and passionate care that they've learned to suppress. But here's where this knowledge becomes both a gift and a burden. Once you see people this way, you can never go back to superficial interactions. You start seeing the tragedy of human potential everywhere you look. You notice how many people are living lives that completely contradict their authentic nature. You recognize how much creative power and genuine aliveness is being wasted because people are too afraid to face and integrate their shadow material. Jung showed me that this shadow avoidance isn't just an individual problem. It's a collective epidemic that's causing massive psychological and social dysfunction. When millions of people are disconnected from their authentic power, creativity and passion, society itself becomes hollow, artificial, and ultimately unsustainable. You see this everywhere once you know what to look for. Political leaders who present themselves as strong and decisive while being terrified of their own vulnerability and uncertainty. Business executives who project confidence and control while being driven by deep insecurity and fear of failure. Social media influencers who present perfect lives while hiding profound loneliness and existential confusion. But Jung didn't just diagnose this problem. He discovered that understanding shadow dynamics gives you a tremendous advantage in all your relationships and interactions. When you can see what people are hiding from themselves, you can relate to their authentic self rather than just their persona. You can offer them exactly what they need most, speak to their real concerns, and help them feel truly seen and understood. This creates what Jung called authentic connection, relationships based on recognition of each other's complete humanity rather than just socially acceptable facades. When you relate to people's shadows as well as their personas, you give them permission to be more real, more honest, more genuinely themselves in your presence. Jung taught me that this is one of the greatest gifts you can offer another human being, the experience of being seen and accepted for who they really are, including the parts they've learned to hide or reject. When people feel this kind of authentic acceptance, they often begin to relax their persona defenses and access more of their genuine power and creativity. But Jung also warned me about the responsibility that comes with this knowledge. When you can see people's shadows, you hold tremendous power over them. You could use this insight to manipulate, control, or exploit their hidden vulnerabilities and desires. Jung was very clear that this knowledge should only be used in service of helping others become more whole and authentic, never to gain advantage over them. This ethical dimension of shadow work became one of Jung's core teachings. He believed that those who develop the ability to see and work with shadow material have a moral obligation to use this capacity in service of healing and integration, both for individuals and for society as a whole. Jung showed me that this responsibility extends to how you handle your own shadow material. Once you understand how shadow dynamics work, you can no longer claim ignorance about your own unconscious patterns, projections, and disowned aspects. You become accountable for doing your own inner work, for facing and integrating the parts of yourself that you've been hiding or rejecting. This personal shadow work becomes the foundation for being able to help others with theirs. Jung discovered that you can only guide others as far into authenticity and wholeness as you've been willing to go yourself. If you're still avoiding significant aspects of your own shadow, you'll unconsciously sabotage others' attempts to face theirs. But Jung promised me something extraordinary about this inner work. He said that as you become more willing to face and integrate your own shadow material, you develop what he called psychological freedom, the capacity to choose your responses rather than being controlled by unconscious patterns and projections. When you're no longer running from aspects of yourself, you stop being triggered by those same qualities in others. When you've integrated your own anger, other people's anger doesn't throw you off balance. When you've accepted your own neediness, you don't feel overwhelmed by others' emotional demands. When you've owned your own selfishness, you don't get righteously indignant about others' self-interest. This psychological freedom transforms all your relationships because you're relating from wholeness rather than from your own unconscious wounds and projections. You can see others clearly because you're not looking through the filter of your own unintegrated shadow material. Jung taught me that this clarity of perception is one of the most valuable skills you can develop, both for your personal relationships and for navigating the complex social and professional dynamics that make up adult life. When you can see what's really going on underneath surface presentations, you make much better decisions about who to trust, how to communicate, and what strategies will be most effective in any given situation. Now, I want to share with you the most profound implication of Jung's shadow teachings, something that will fundamentally transform not just how you see others, but how you understand your entire purpose and responsibility as a conscious human being. Jung revealed to me that once you develop the ability to see people's hidden wholeness, their disowned power, their suppressed creativity and authentic nature, you can never again participate in the collective unconsciousness that keeps humanity trapped in superficial, inauthentic ways of living and relating. You become what Jung called a carrier of consciousness, someone who holds space for authentic human potential in a world that largely operates from persona and projection. This isn't a role you choose. It's a natural consequence of developing genuine psychological insight. Once you see the tragedy of wasted human potential everywhere you look, you become compelled to do something about it. But Jung warned me that this calling comes with both tremendous power and profound loneliness. When you can see through social facades and recognize authentic potential, you often find yourself isolated from the unconscious consensus that most people participate in. You can no longer engage in small talk, surface-level relationships, or social dynamics based on mutual deception and persona maintenance. This isolation isn't superiority or judgment, though it can be misunderstood that way. It's the natural result of operating from a different level of consciousness than most people around you. You're playing by different rules, seeing different realities, responding to different values and priorities. Jung taught me that this isolation is temporary and ultimately transforms into what he called sacred connection, relationships with others who have also developed the courage to face their shadows and live from their authentic wholeness. These connections are rare but incredibly nourishing because they're based on genuine recognition rather than mutual persona projection. When you meet someone else who has done significant shadow work, the connection is immediate and profound. You recognize each other's authenticity, appreciate each other's courage, and can relate from wholeness rather than neediness or projection. These relationships become islands of authentic humanity in a sea of unconscious social interaction. But Jung showed me that the real purpose of developing shadow sight isn't to find a few authentic relationships, though that's a wonderful byproduct. The real purpose is to become an agent of conscious evolution, someone who helps accelerate the collective process of humanity awakening to its fuller potential. This happens through what Jung called modeling authentic possibility. When you live from integrated wholeness, when you express your genuine nature rather than maintaining carefully crafted personas, you give others permission to do the same. Your authenticity becomes contagious, inspiring others to risk greater honesty and self-expression. Jung discovered that this modeling effect is much more powerful than trying to teach or convince people to change. When people see someone living authentically, accessing their real power and creativity, expressing their genuine nature without apology, it activates their own longing for authentic expression. They begin to question their own persona limitations and consider whether they might be capable of greater honesty and aliveness. But Jung also taught me that this modeling requires tremendous psychological strength and spiritual maturity. Living authentically in an inauthentic world subjects you to criticism, misunderstanding, and often rejection from people who are threatened by genuine expression. You need to develop what Jung called inner authority, the capacity to validate your own authentic expression rather than depending on external approval. This inner authority becomes the foundation for what Jung called constructive rebellion, the capacity to refuse participation in collective unconsciousness while still maintaining compassion and connection with those who haven't yet awakened to their fuller potential. Jung showed me that this constructive rebellion isn't about rejecting others or society. It's about refusing to participate in the mutual deception and limitation that keeps everyone trapped in fractional existence. You stop pretending to be less than you are to make others comfortable. You stop suppressing your insights to avoid challenging others' worldviews. You stop diminishing your power to maintain social harmony. But Jung emphasized that this refusal to participate in collective limitation must be balanced with what he called strategic compassion, the recognition that most people are unconscious not by choice, but by conditioning. They've been taught to fear and suppress their authentic nature from childhood, and they're often terrified of the chaos they imagine would result from expressing their genuine thoughts, feelings, and desires. This strategic compassion allows you to maintain empathy for others' unconsciousness while refusing to enable or participate in it. You can love people without colluding with their limitations. You can support their growth without accepting their excuses for remaining small. You can offer them authentic connection without compromising your own integrity. Jung taught me that this balance between refusal and compassion is one of the most sophisticated psychological skills you can develop. It requires tremendous discernment to know when to challenge others and when to simply hold space, when to speak truth and when to remain silent, when to push for greater authenticity and when to allow natural timing. But Jung promised me that developing this discernment would become one of my greatest sources of effectiveness and satisfaction in life. When you know how to see people's authentic potential and relate to them in ways that activate rather than threaten it, you become incredibly skilled at inspiring positive change in individuals and groups. This skill becomes invaluable in every area of life. In relationships, you learn to speak to your partner's highest potential rather than getting trapped in conflicts with their defensive patterns. In parenting, you learn to see and nurture your children's authentic gifts rather than trying to mold them into social expectations. In professional settings, you learn to recognize and activate hidden talents and creative potential that others miss entirely. Jung showed me that this capacity to see and activate authentic potential is actually a form of love, what he called evolutionary love. Unlike sentimental love that accepts everything or conditional love that demands change, evolutionary love sees people's highest potential and loves them enough to call them toward it. This evolutionary love doesn't reject people as they are, but it also doesn't enable them to remain stuck in limitation and unconsciousness. It holds a vision of their possible wholeness, while meeting them exactly where they are in their current development. Jung taught me that practicing this evolutionary love becomes a spiritual practice, a way of serving the evolution of consciousness through conscious relationship. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to see someone more clearly than they see themselves, to reflect back their hidden potential, to offer them the experience of being truly seen and valued for who they really are. But Jung also revealed to me the ultimate secret about this work. The more you practice seeing others' authentic wholeness, the more you activate and integrate your own. Shadow work isn't just about helping others become more conscious. It's about using conscious relationship as a tool for your own continued psychological and spiritual development. When you relate to others from their highest potential, you strengthen your own capacity for wisdom, compassion, and authentic expression. When you refuse to participate in unconscious social dynamics, you free yourself from the collective limitations that keep most people trapped in mediocre lives. Jung showed me that this creates what he called an upward spiral of consciousness, where your authenticity inspires others' authenticity, which in turn supports your continued growth and development. You become part of a conscious community that exists not as a physical location, but as a network of individuals committed to authentic expression and evolutionary development. This conscious community becomes your true home, regardless of your physical circumstances or geographical location. You recognize its members instantly when you meet them because they carry the same commitment to truth, authenticity, and conscious evolution that drives your own life choices. Jung taught me that finding and contributing to this conscious community becomes one of life's most important purposes, not because it serves your personal happiness, though it often does, but because it serves the collective evolution of human consciousness itself. Every person who develops the courage to live authentically, to integrate their shadow material, to express their genuine nature regardless of social pressure, contributes to the critical mass of consciousness that humanity needs to solve its collective problems and realize its highest potential. If you've recognized yourself in this exploration of Jung's most profound teachings and want to develop your own capacity for seeing and activating authentic human potential, I want you to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications for more insights that can support your journey toward psychological wholeness and conscious living. Share this video with others who might be ready to look beyond surface presentations and recognize the hidden wholeness that exists in every human being. Sometimes the most powerful awakening happens when someone feels truly seen for who they really are beneath their social masks. And leave a comment sharing your own experience with recognizing shadow dynamics in yourself and others. What have you noticed about the difference between people's public presentations and their authentic nature? How has understanding shadow work changed your relationships and interactions? Because Jung's ultimate message about this sacred knowledge is this: once you see the hidden wholeness in others, you become responsible for helping them remember it themselves. Once you recognize the vast potential that humanity is wasting through unconsciousness and persona identification, you become called to serve the awakening of that potential through your own authentic expression and conscious relationship. Stop participating in the collective conspiracy to remain small, safe, and socially acceptable. Start living from your integrated wholeness and reflecting that possibility back to everyone you meet. The world desperately needs people who have the courage to be genuinely themselves and the wisdom to help others discover the same authentic freedom.